What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have something in particular I want to look at with you guys, and that is a article made by Inverse where they got to interview the game director for Dragon Age the Veilguard. And let me tell you, some of the stuff said in this article is wild. Like, I don't know why journalists are obsessed with holding this game up to the degree that they're trying to do. Like, they act like this game was one of the best things ever made, or one of the best games ever made rather, but in reality, it's just delusional. Like, I don't see why they try to hold this up to such a high regard. Like, the only thing I can really think of is that they're just trying to justify the takes and the ratings that they gave this game when it came out. I don't know. But anyway, without further ado, let's dive into the article. And of course, at the end of the video, if you guys want to look at the article, I'll have a link to it in the description. Alright, so this first part of the article reads as follows. Varric, always with his beloved crossbow Bianca, has been something of a poster dwarf for the franchise, a constant in a series that drastically changes between each entry, but Varric himself is also a perfect representation of Dragon Age at large. An emotionally complex character, Varric openly deals with deep trauma, but can still manage to be whimsical and uplifting. That holistic sense of character is a big part of what's made Dragon Age so successful and lasting. Its influence is clear to see, especially in the 2023 Game of the Year Baldur's Gate 3, which heavily borrows from the world and party member design of Dragon Age games. It's a connection that's been pointed out by countless fans and critics, but what's fascinating is how Baldur's Gate 3 and Veilguard feel like they're advancing different aspects of Dragon Age's identity. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think Dragon Age the Veilguard is advancing anything other than further advancing BioWare down the path of bankruptcy. Now, granted, they're not there yet, but that's definitely where they're going at this rate. But jokes aside, comparing Dragon Age the Veilguard to Baldur's Gate 3 is a comparison I couldn't even dream in my wildest dreams, alright? They are reaching with this one. Are you really going to compare Dragon Age the Veilguard to Baldur's Gate 3? Now, there are probably some similarities between the two games and the party system and maybe the characterization, but the main point is that Baldur's Gate 3 did it better. Gamers aren't going to care that your game and an actually good game have similarities or have different things in common with how you go about stuff. They don't care about that. All they care about is who does it better. Trying to compare Dragon Age the Veilguard to Baldur's Gate 3 is only going to make people want to buy Baldur's Gate 3 more because they're going to look at Dragon Age the Veilguard and be like, man, why would I buy this pile of garbage when I can buy this absolute peak game over here, right? Like it's just a terrible comparison to make. It's a bad take. It really is. I don't get why they decided to write this in the article. It just to me, I just think that it just makes the game look even worse because you're putting it beside something that's really, really good. Up next, we have this section and it reads as follows. When it comes to authenticity in games, plenty of directors and developers talk the talk, but Bush, and sorry for my pronunciation, I don't really know how to pronunciate their last name, but anyway, is the rare game maker who delivers. From her time with The Sims to Dragon Age, Bush has always brought a deep sense of humanity to the game, putting characters first and never shying away from nuance or complexity in identity, relationships, and existential crises. It's what makes Bush a leader in the industry and why BioWare tried so hard to carry on the Dragon Age series' legacy with Veilguard. But Bush isn't finished yet. She's come a long way in the industry and has wisdom to impart and more projects to come. So, if I'm going to be completely honest, and I'm sure a lot of you agree with me when I say this, if there is a lot more to come in Bush, the game director that is over Dragon Age: The Veilguard, if she is still at the head of those projects, I don't even want to see them. I don't even want to see them because if this is what we get when she is quote unquote putting characters first and never shying away from nuance or complexity, saying that with heavy air quotes, I don't want to see what she produces next because it's just, I mean, look at Tosh. Tosh is the prime example of what she has produced as a game director. Like, if you want to say you're focusing on putting characters first, and then characters like Tosh even leave the writing room, it's appalling. I don't know how Tosh as a character even left the writing room with how Tosh behaves in the game. Like, it's absurd. It's actually absurd. And I just don't I don't get it. I don't. But anyway, moving on. Alright, up next, this next section from the article reads, as such, Dragon Age has always been incredibly progressive. Origins liberally featured queer romances and Inquisition. The third game in the series has a whole plot line about a major side character being transgender. This allows the series to explore themes of identity and belonging in ways other RPGs can't, and Veilguard certainly sticks to that idea. "I'm an openly queer trans woman," Bush says. "It shaped everything about who I am, and it's been the source of a lot of joy, a lot of difficulty and perspective. For me personally, one of the greatest gifts about being trans is the amount of introspection it forces upon you. You spend a lot of time deeply examining who you are and why that matters." Now, the thing I want to focus on with this, and now before I say anything else, I just want to say that I have nothing against the LGBT plus community. I have nothing against them. They're free to do whatever they want. It doesn't affect me. When I have no biases or anything against them. But what this tells me when I read this is, as a game director, she would rather focus on trying to put identity politics in her games rather than writing and making a good game. Now, on paper, trying to make a game focused around inclusiveness and belonging, that is not a bad thing. Granted, it's done correctly. But when you look at Dragon Age, the Veilguard, it clearly hasn't been done correctly. It's been ham-fisted in to where you can barely, if any, interact with the vast majority, if any, characters without running into a pronoun issue or some kind of identity political related issue. And gamers in general, like casual gamers that just don't really think about that in their day-to-day life, they don't care about that. They don't want anything to do with that. So why would they want to boot up a video game where they're constantly being told, if you misgender or you say the wrong pronouns to somebody, you have to go do 10 push-ups or something. Pull a bar, as it was. Um, I don't understand like how they thought it was a good idea to just ham fist him in like that. In previous Dragon Age games, there was more nuance to it. They wrote it better. But in Dragon Age the Veilguard, it just feels like it feels more like they're projecting their worldview and how they think the world should be into the game rather than writing it with some nuance and some creativity, if that makes any sense. And I'm sorry if that steps on any toes, that's just kind of how I feel because there are certain ways you need to do this in order for it to be in a way that people will enjoy the game. Like if you look at Baldur's Gate 3, since they want to point to Baldur's Gate 3 to try and make Dragon Age the Veilguard look good, um, Baldur's Gate 3 explores the same kinds of things that Veilguard does in the fact that you can have characters that are gay, lesbian, trans, whatever. Like it's ambiguous. You can have whatever you want in Baldur's Gate 3, but no one had any issues with that. You want to know why nobody had any issues with Baldur's Gate 3? Having those kinds of things in the game because the game was actually good. Baldur's Gate 3 is a phenomenal game, and when the game is good, people won't care about those kinds of issues. But when you ham fist it in and a vast majority of the dialogue revolves around those kinds of issues, it really just takes people out of the game. And I don't know why they decided to go so hard on it, and I guess this explains why, since the game director values identity politics so high to the point to where she wanted the game to revolve around it, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, on to the next section. Alright, in this next paragraph, it reads, For Bush, great games offer a mirror that allows you to reflect on your own identity, preferences, and choices. When developing a game, Bush says she is thinking about the role introspection plays on people in general and how each of us go through our lives having these moments of crisis, I'm sorry, crises, anyway, epiphanies and those quiet moments when you're alone. These are questions that are ripe for personalized experiences like RPGs, especially when you consider our biggest creative pillar, be who you want to be. So that combined with the last couple paragraphs we went over, again, it just tells me that this game director wanted to make a game that reflects her own reality. Like, it explains why characters like Tosh just feel like ham-fisted self-insert characters rather than actually well-written characters. Because, in my opinion, when you're writing video games like this, where there's supposed to be a lot of nuance and the narrative is supposed to be rich and immersive, you can't just copy and paste your own worldview and your own personality and just your identity into the game. Now, granted, video games are art, and art often reflects life, but you have to remember these characters are supposed to be their own people, and they're supposed to be indicative of the world that they exist in, right? Now, granted, the world can be whatever the writers want to be, but the point is that the characters should draw from and be inspired by the experiences of the writers. They shouldn't be a carbon copy of the writers. These characters shouldn't exist to um, buoy the writers and their beliefs and their worldview. They don't exist to justify or verify that, or whatever term you want to use, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a narratively rich, story-driven game, and when you ham-fist stuff in like that, like I said before, it drives people away. And this paragraph is another example that I think really drives that home because the fact that she's harping so hard on the idea that games should reflect and mirror our identities as people, it really just tells me that she was far more focused on using the game to project her worldview or to just reflect her or her team's ideals and identities rather than making the characters their own people and letting the characters be inspired by the writing team and their identities and experiences, but still be their own people, because that's how it should be, because the characters, they should be inspired by, not copy and paste, and not be a copy and paste of what the writers, or who the writers are rather, if that makes any sense. I'm kind of having trouble articulating this, but my point is that the characters in the Dragon Age the Veilguard really just feel like um, they were there to project the ideals of the writers rather than be their own characters that are inspired by the experiences of the writers. That's the point I'm trying to make. Um, but anyway, on to the final section I want to go over in this article. All right, and in these last couple paragraphs, it reads, questions about BioWare's future abound, especially with the team now pivoting to focus work on Mass Effect 5, a similarly long-awaited comeback for a beloved franchise. But in the immediate future, the studio has faced a different problem, a hate campaign. A hate campaign that's put Veilguard at the center of a kind of culture war on social media, along with plenty of hateful comments towards developers and review bombing on sites like Metacritic. I think we should talk about it, Bush says. It's hard. It's hard. I grew up in a time when it really felt like we're there to celebrate the games and to have these shared experiences, and that drive is still there. I think the discourse we see is the result of highly polarized times, and perhaps it's a little naive. I know it's hard when you have to ask the question, is this game for me? Do I belong here? And games are better for it when we can say, yes, you do belong here. And now, I must apologize because my reading isn't too great right now. I have four eyes and none of them are good for it anymore, I guess. But this is probably my favorite part of the article, because in the first paragraph, a hate campaign? Really? What are you gonna say next? That's a small minority of trolls on Reddit or something that are orchestrating the downfall of your game? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, if you just look at the feedback that people are giving the game, and the fact that the game hasn't even peaked over 100,000 concurrent players on Steam, it it's telling. Like, I don't know what else to say really. There's not even much you really can say, honestly, because at the end of the day, it gamers just don't like the game. They just don't. I don't know why they keep trying to make it more complicated than what it is. You made a game, people didn't like it, it didn't sell well. That's the end of the story. I don't understand why they need to try and spin this narrative to try and make it more complicated than what it is. It's like, I don't know why these journalists are always obsessed with trying to play the victim with these kinds of games. I don't know why they defend them so hard. I just don't get it. Like, the victim mentality is strong here, saying that it's a hate campaign, it's the center of a culture war. Like, it's not that complicated. People just didn't like the game and didn't buy it, and are voicing their opinions about why they didn't buy it on the internet. It's that simple. Like, that's just consumer feedback, I hate to tell you. But, and now, in this last paragraph, one thing I do want to focus on is the statement that the question in the statement that that the game director puts forward here. The part where it says, I know it's hard when you have to ask the question, is this game for me? Do I belong here? And games are better for it when we can say, yes, you do belong here. That quote to me is not really, it just doesn't, I don't know, to me it just doesn't really apply because, in my opinion, most people don't play games to belong, to feel like they belong to something, right? When I play games, I'm not trying to feel like I belong in the game. I play the game because real life sucks, and playing video games is a form of escapism where I can have fun and do what I want, right? The majority of people aren't playing a video game to belong there. They're playing the video game to have fun and to be entertained by the product. That's why most people are playing the game. I don't get what the obsession is with making a game inclusive so people can feel like they belong like in the game or whatever. Like I don't know, maybe I'm missing the point, but to me, to me this statement just completely misses the point of why people play video games because people aren't playing, like I said, people aren't playing video games to feel like they belong. They're playing video games to have fun or to be engrossed in a story, to escape reality, whatever reason you want to apply. I can almost promise you that the vast majority of people are not playing a video game to quote unquote belong there, you know? Like I just think she missed the point with that. Alright, but that about wraps it up for the article. Thank you for watching, and of course the article itself is going to be in the description if you want to read it yourself. Um, I just think that this article is just out of touch and really puts a focusing lens on why Dragon Age the Veilguard came out the way it did. When you have a game director that focuses so much on um, identity and the trying to make people feel like they belong in a fictional universe, like again, I don't really get that. But when you have a game director that's tunnel visioned on something like that, this is what happens when you have that. You get characters like Tosh that a lot of people just genuinely dislike. You have scenes in the game that feel super ham-fisted, like the pull a bar scene where the pirate lady does 10 push-ups because she missed the pronouns for somebody, right? Like you get scenes like that are just so out of place in a fantasy setting like that. And it really is just telling about how Dragon Age the Veilguard ended up the way it did. And as for the article as a whole, I don't really know why they're glazing the Veilguard so much. Like the game, the bottom line is the game was bad and was not received very well, and it didn't sell. That's the end of the story. It For a AAA title, it didn't sell very well. It sold like I think last I looked it was like 86,000 at its peak on Steam, like 86,000 players, right? And if a AAA title doesn't even break like I don't even I can't even think of the number they would need to break in order for them to at least break even. Like not even breaking 100,000 on peak players on Steam is appalling, and that just does not bode well for their sales figures. But the point is that I don't know why game journalists are defending this game so hard, and I don't know why they feel the need to act like this game director did something great and did something like wonderful when the reality is that she was the game director over a game that failed and she shouldn't be getting praised for it. I don't understand why they continuing to do that. I don't know why. It just seems really out of touch to me. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have any suggestions for any future videos, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.